Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Trees provide cooling shade on a hot day like today. But what makes a tree work? We will be learning about tree physiology. Also, weeds in the garden are bad, but some weeds are awful. We're talking about the worst weeds. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Wes Harper. Wes is the Natural Resource Manager with the City of Germantown right here in Tennessee. And Mr. D will be joining us later. We're at the Memphis Botanic Garden. We're in front of this water oak, which is a huge water oak. And we're going to learn about tree physiology.
Yes.
This is the question we usually get. What is photosynthesis though? How does that work?
Photosynthesis is where the tree's leaves absorb the sunlight and produces carbohydrates and sugars and provides the energy and the food for the tree.
So it's all about energy and food for the tree.
It's all about energy and food.
Okay. Now, it's been hot here lately.
Yes.
What about respiration though?
Respiration is the process where the tree uses that energy that's produced by the leaves. But when it gets over 92, 93 degrees, the trees have cells that shut down the process of that photosynthesis and helps that tree maintain and retain the energy that has been already produced by the leaves.
Okay, which is really important because it has been above in the 92, 93 degrees.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the different layers of a tree. Let's talk about the xylem and the phloem. So let's start with the xylem.
Okay, the xylem works like with osmosis, and that is on the interior part of the cambium. Okay. And it pulls the water and the minerals from the soil, takes it up through the tree, all the way up to the tips of the leaves. It goes through the transpiration process where that moisture or water is released through the pores of the leaf.
Okay. And what about the phloem?
The phloem tissue is the vascular section of the tree that takes that energy that's produced by the leaves and pulls it out through the tree and disperses it throughout the tree's parts.
Okay. So that flows in both directions?
Flows in two directions, yes. Or three.
Or three?
Yes. You have the rays of the wood, which run from the interior part of the tree outwards to where the sapwood is, and that carries the nutrients radially to the sapwood. Here we have, Chris, a slab of wood. This is a piece of red oak, and just to describe some of the physiological aspects of this piece of wood, or this red oak, we have the vascular tissue, is made up of 4 different parts, or more actually, but to simplify it. The bark, phloem, cambium, and xylem tissue. Phloem to the outside, the cambium in the center, the xylem to the inside. Okay. The bark is to protect all the other vascular tissue. All right. The phloem tissue is what brings the nutrients throughout the tree and disperses it from the leaves. Then the cambium produces both the phloem and the xylem tissue as it grows, and the xylem tissue brings the nutrients up from the root system up throughout the tree. Okay. Now, the rays that you see, the small lines right here running through there, those are your rays. Yes, they're very pronounced, especially when the wood is dried up some. Okay. And these are your growth rings. So as the tree grows, it produces an annual growth ring, early wood and late wood. Now, the rays it transports nutrients into the sapwood area, which is out here. Now, the unique thing about this functioning tissue is all this wood that you see in here is non-conductive. It's just there for the support that I had mentioned earlier. Your productive and conductive tissue, or phloem and xylem tissue, is only on the outermost part of the tree. Right there. That's why a tree can be hollow and still function, just like a solid tree. Okay. And then, of course, you'll have places where insects will live in there, and the tree will compartmentalize over that. Right. But all through here, you have the cells that divide. When a tree gets wounded like that, the parenchyma cells would divide and create new tissue and compartmentalize over the wound. That's how all this functions. That xylem tissue has the parenchyma cells that do that division.
That's pretty good.
That's how trees heal. When a tree gets wounded, the wound is permanent. When we cut ourselves, we heal, but it's the same cells system that heals both our cut on our hand and the wound on the tree is the parenchyma cells. And it's closely related to how our bodies function. It's a living organism.
Now let's talk about the roots though. What do we need to know about the roots of a tree?
Roots are very important. However, a tree can these trees that blow over, a tree can survive without having a complete set of roots because of the energy that the leaves can produce for it.
Okay.
So the roots function as anchorage to the ground, storage for what's produced by the leaves, and it's just anchored.
Okay.
You know, keeps it anchored to the ground. That's when you see a tree blow over, you'll notice that there might be one root, and the rest of the roots are dead.
Huh.
You know, it didn't have anything to anchor it to the ground.
How about that? You know, most people think that tree roots go deep down into the ground. That's not the case though, right?
When they're young, they'll have a taproot. That taproot will either turn and go out and become part of the lateral root system, or it just dies off.
It just dies
It
off.
can't function properly. It can't survive unless there's water down there.
Okay.
Like a spring well or something down low that it can get nutrients and water from.
Okay. Now what about the little tiny roots though, the little fan roots that are right there at the surface?
The fibrous roots or the hair roots
right.
or the feeder roots.
Right.
They've got different names for them. They're very fine, kind of like our hair.
Okay.
Yeah, about like that. And they absorb the moisture or the water, the available water,
Okay.
and that leads it all the way up throughout the tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much, you know, their function.
They're feeder roots, yeah.
They just feed the roots, just feed the tree. Now, this time of the year, we get a lot of questions about, oh, the leaves are falling off my tree so early.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because there's not any available water in the soil. And so the tree is saying, I need to stop using up the energy that I've produced so far and get rid of some of these leaves so I can start to rest and get myself ready for the winter.
Now, is that
It's
amplified?
just premature leaf drop.
And I'm about to get to that because we've had a lot of hot weather. So I wondered, does that amplify what we're seeing?
Yes, it does, especially when the soil is dry now, as it is. And I mentioned the transpiration process stopping because of the temperature. Yeah, it all ties together.
Should we water trees? How about that?
Yes, you water in the
How much would you water a big tree like this?
Oh my
though?
goodness,
I mean,
a tree this size could probably, if it's available, pull up 150 gallons a day if it has the root system too.
lot.
And remember I mentioned that transpiration, you know,
Right.
where does that water go? It goes throughout the tree. It's a big tree. If it's able to transpire, it leaves the tree through the pores on the leaves,
through the pores of the
on
leaves.
the underside.
That has to do with what, stomates?
Stomates.
And things like that. See, I
Yeah.
remember that from just simple biology.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the
for-
guard cells are
and the
what
guard
close
cells,
the
right.
stomates to prevent them from losing all their water that they've taken up during these hot days.
Okay. Now, when you water your tree, I mean, should you use a soaker hose, or
Soaker
how would
hose
you
is
go
good.
about watering it?
I have a Ross Deep Root water
Okay.
at my house. That way I can turn the water on, and it's a long tube, attaches to the water hose,
Okay.
and I work that probe down to the ground with that water. So I'm creating more airspace in the soil, and I'm getting that water down deeper. When this ground is really compacted, sometimes that water doesn't percolate down through the
a good
soil.
point.
So,
Okay.
but other than that, a soaker hose to me is best because that water that flies through the air and it hits the ground, it compacts the soil.
Compacts the soil.
That upper layer of soil, yeah.
Okay. When is the best time to plant a tree? How about that one?
I prefer the winter.
So you prefer the winter?
Late fall,
And why is
winter,
that? Why is
or
that?
early spring. The temperature's not quite so hot. And the tree can rest through the winter as long as you put proper mulch on it. We have some trees that we need to get to the ground this October. Sometimes it's a matter of timing. Sometimes the weather's not real good in the deep winter, but
Right.
yeah, fall, winter, early spring.
Early spring would be the best time to do that.
Some people are planting trees right now. I don't recommend it. I don't, it's just too hot.
Yeah, it is hot.
But a landscaper's got to stay busy.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, look, we do appreciate all your valuable information that you have about trees.
Sure. Glad
That's
to
a
be
tree
here.
guy, right? There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mr. Day. Weeds that we must get rid of.
Weeds that we must get rid of. You know, when I saw that topic, I just kind of leaned back and I thought, okay, I can think of a few weeds that we need to get rid of. and I came up with 4 or 5 that kind of came to mind pretty quick.
I'm sure, real quick.
And then I thought, maybe I need to do a little checking. I started doing a little research.
All right.
And I found a couple of lists
So they're
out there on the
Actual lists.
internet that I thought would be worth talking about.
Okay.
One, Mother Earth News did a survey of about 2,000 gardeners in United States and Canada.
Okay.
So maybe a little bit further north than us. And I have what they came up with
Okay.
the 10 worst weeds.
All right, let's hear those. Yeah, I got
And let me go through those, and I'll tell you, in this list, the number 1 weed I had mentioned didn't even make the list, and I'll tell you what that is.
Okay.
In a minute.
Yeah. All right. I'm curious to hear that. Okay.
But the number one weed that number 1 by far, according to Mother Earth News or their survey, crabgrass.
Crabgrass.
Crabgrass
Number 1.
was the number 1
All
weed
right.
that you needed to get rid of.
Okay.
Number 2 was dandelion.
Oh.
Number 3 was Bermuda grass.
Okay.
Number 4 was bindweed.
All right, I can see that.
Number 5 was chickweed,
Okay.
and then ground ivy, Canada thistle,
Ooh.
which is a real problem in cattle pasture,
Uh-huh.
but burdock,
Okay.
quackgrass,
Crabgrass.
and Johnson grass.
Wow.
So those are according to Mother Earth News. Now, then I went to Southern Living. I decided this is probably a little north,
Yeah,
so let's
a little
go to
north.
Southern Living and see what they say.
So a little variation in that?
I got a
Okay.
much different
Okay.
list, and they included some of the hardwood
Okay.
pests that are out there,
All right.
and but they got to the weed that I had pretty much at the top of my list.
Okay.
And I'll tell you. when
All
I
right, let's
there.
get to it. All right.
According to Southern Living, wisteria, either Japanese or Chinese wisteria, is one of the worst weed problems out there, and or worst plant problem.
Okay.
They consider hardwood plant growing out of place as a weed.
Okay.
Chinese
that.
privet was number
yes.
2.
Yes, yes.
Kudzu
Yes.
was number
See, I would
3.
have thought those two.
Water hyacinth was a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Field bindweed. So I guess
I
that's
would've thought that.
that's the first one that
Yeah, that's on
connected
the,
with Mother
right,
Earth.
Right.
And then they got to the one that I had pretty much at the top of my list, nutsedge.
Nutsedge. See, that's what I would have thought.
Yeah,
Would
that's
have been
the
number
first
1.
thing that crossed
Nutsedge.
my
Right,
mind,
right.
nutsedge.
I'm with you.
And then they what they did is they included almost all of the weeds, most of the weeds that
Oh,
Mother Earth
okay.
had. They said grass,
Grass. Okay.
and they said
Bermuda.
crabgrass, Bermuda grass, bluegrass, goosegrass, Dallas grass.
Okay.
All of those
All
are
grass.
problems. So they
Okay.
just said grass.
All right.
And then the chameleon plant.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really pretty, but really
yeah.
invasive.
Very
I think.
invasive.
Cudweed.
Okay.
And common violet.
Cutweed. Violets, I can see. Yeah.
And now,
And
because
garden
of a
lawns.
program we had done earlier, we've got to add the mulberry
We got to
weed
add
that.
mulberry weed. That's right.
But those, according to a lot of people, are the weeds we need to get rid of. I had nutsedge, goosegrass, Bermuda grass, pigweed, morning glory, dollarweed. You know, those are some
Okay.
things that
I
I
can get with some
kind
of
of
those.
came up with.
Okay.
What
And
do
why
you
do we
think?
need to get rid of some of those, though? You think it's because they produce a lot of seeds? Or what?
They bother me. You know, they get in under my blueberries and my blackberries, and they do produce a lot of seed. Pigweed, I mentioned, that's probably not a real problem for most homeowners, but it's probably the number 1 weed problem that farmers face,
Yeah,
because one plant can produce up to 1.3 million seed. And
Really? 1.3 million seeds?
yeah,
Good. Right.
the seed aren't as viable. They don't last that long in the environment. They only last about 4 or 5 years, but who cares if you have 1.3 million per plant? You
That's a
know,
lot.
And it's still very, very, and it's also resistant to a lot of the herbicides that are out there. And so that's you know.
Crabgrass, I get that too. You know.
Nutsedge.
Nutsedge.
You know, not a lot of products will kill it. You know, Mazaquin
Yeah.
is
Image.
about the only thing that'll take it out, and of course, and agriculturally, you can take it out with several different products.
Okay. But nutsedge is tough, so that's why I would have thought it was number 1, because you know it's diverse.
Of course, if you're
Yeah.
turkey, if you like turkeys, it's what's it called in turkeys? It's chufas.
Yeah.
It's just nutsedge.
nutsedge.
They plant it. turkeys love to scratch it up, and they'll dig the roots up and eat them.
So what, drought conditions, nutsedge can grow, wet conditions, nutsedge will grow.
That's right. It can grow through plastic.
Yes, go through
You
plastic.
put down plastic, and then, you know, it's just
But you know, one that's not on there that I thought would have been Poana, because it produces a lot of seeds, and a lot of these weeds too tell you something about your soil. You
Yep.
know, about the fertility.
Right.
You know, whether that ground is compact or not. Like, you know, crabgrass.
Yeah.
It likes to grow in compact soils.
some of the other sedges, brome sedge, and you know, henbit, and you
Yeah.
know that.
Chickweed.
Yeah. Of course, well, chickweed made it.
Chickweed made it on there.
It made it on.
But you know,
there.
the thing about chickweed and some of these other weeds too, they're edible now. Dandelion,
Well, kudzu.
kudzu,
Everything.
Right.
Kudzu, in this discussion about kudzu, he said, deep fried kudzu leaves are great. Now, I've never had a deep fried kudzu
No,
leaf, but the
deep
entire kudzu plant is edible. And if you have cattle or goats, they will kill it. They will eat
Yeah.
it to the ground. They
Yeah,
will not
they're
let
gross.
it. They will not let it. You know, during this time of the year, late summer, if you mow or cut kudzu right now while it's storing up energy to get through the winter, you'll kill it.
You kill it.
You know,
Okay.
and that's what goats and cows do, and they eat it all year. It's a legume, high in
Yeah,
protein,
Yeah.
and
makes sense.
you know, it's a
In a garden setting too, you need to make sure people read and follow the label though, because there's going to be a, you know, on the label is going to tell you everything you need to know, right? And you know that the label is the law.
follow. If you're using pesticides, you know, we haven't mentioned a lot
Yeah.
about using pesticides for these things, but yeah, that label, it's really very, very interesting. The label is very interesting. It tells you the toxicity of the
Yeah.
product, the LD50. It tells you, you know, what weeds it'll kill or what insects it'll kill, and what, you know,
And what you need to
and
wear.
it'll
Yeah.
even have a range. Some of them it'll have like it'll do a little good, you know, as a percent effectiveness and
Yeah.
all that. You know, some of them are you know partial, but it tells you to clean up and you know how to dress
Yeah.
appropriately
It's
and
good. Yeah,
all
it's
that
good
good
stuff
stuff.
on the label. Real good, important stuff. But there's your list of weeds that you got
Weeds
to get
you
rid
got
of.
to get rid of.
Got to get
Yeah.
rid of. Yeah, nutsedge wasn't number one. I'm shocked. I'm with you on that.
It was on mine.
Yeah, I'm shocked. All right. Thank you, Mr. D. Appreciate that. That's good stuff.
Today we're going to be talking about selecting the right tool for the job. The job we're talking about today is going to be pruning. With pruning, you have either a saw or pruner options. The pruners are going to offer a cutting action, whereas the saw is going to be a sawing motion. We have larger versions of these in the loppers and the pole saw, and if the job is big enough, you may need to resort to a chainsaw. If you're going to be using a chainsaw, make sure that you have the proper safety equipment. On this tree, we've identified two issues that we're going to deal with. A smaller branch down here is really for aesthetics. We're going to take our small pruners. The diameter of this branch is small enough to where our hand pruners can get them. You just want to make a cut close to the base of the branch. Now our second branch is a little bit higher. Before we make our cut, we're going to put on our safety glasses, and I've selected the pole saw for this task. I'm going to get close to the base of the branch and begin your cuts. I don't want to get on a ladder and use a handsaw. I'd rather stay firmly on the ground and cut from the ground. Now that you've made your cut, you can take your branch and safely dispose of it. And we've seen now in two different situations how with a small branch you can use the hand pruners, with a larger branch up higher you may use the pole saw. Selecting the right tool for the job is important in pruning.
All right, here's our Q&A segment. You ready, Mr. D?
Good.
These are some good questions. All right, here's our first viewer email. When is the best time to prune a plum tree? Thank you, and this is Richard from Greenville. So, I know you like that.
I
Plum
like
tree.
that one. That's
I know you like that.
easy. That's easy, short and
I
sweet.
know you like that.
Late winter, early fall. I mean, late winter,
Yeah.
early spring.
Yeah, there you go.
Not fall.
Not fall.
Not now. You know, late winter, around the 1st of March.
Right.
Best time.
And how would you prune a plum tree?
Prune a plum tree just like you prune a peach tree or a nectarine with an open-centered system. Ideally 3 to 4 main scaffold limbs. You know, open it up, so that your cover spray can get in there and so that it'll dry out and it'll inhibit some of the fungal growth maybe.
Late winter, early spring.
Late winter, early spring, around the 1st of March.
Right.
You know, you need to go, right now all you need to be doing is oiling your pruning shears, sharpening them a little bit, and then just sit there on the shelf and just kind of look at them over the winter time. But leave them alone.
Just look at them.
Leave them in there.
Keep 'em on the shelf.
Yeah.
All right. All right, Richard, there you have it. All right, here's our next viewer email. Interesting question. Why are there no blooms on my okra? I save seeds from year to year, and this is the first year I've had this problem. This year I used seeds from 2 years ago. Thank you. And this is Matthew from Chattanooga. So, no blooms on my okra. Okra is a self-pollinating plant, right?
Right.
But no blooms.
I don't think the fact that the seed were old had anything to do with it
I don't either.
at all.
Environmental stresses?
Lack of water would do it. I mean, I wonder, it takes 50 to 65 days after planting for blooms to occur.
Right.
And, maybe he's not quite there yet if he planted them late.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But lack of water or a nutrient imbalance.
I thought nutrients.
Okra doesn't like a lot of nitrogen.
True.
Those plants really look green.
Yeah, very green.
If he hit it with a lot of nitrogen, and he may have phosphorus or potassium, maybe a little low in that could
That's a
inhibit
good point.
it. So that nutrient imbalance could do it. But I don't know. That's easy. Another thing that will stop it from blooming is if you have a crop on there and you leave them, they get real big and they just. But that's not his case.
No.
But if you don't harvest them off,
Right.
they will not keep putting.
Okay.
But
I know something else too about okra, because of course my grandparents grew okra forever. It almost doesn't matter though whether you have a bloom or not, because the bloom doesn't last that long anyway. It's just a couple of days or whatever, and it falls off. As long as you have the okra developing, then it will still produce.
Right.
The plant will still produce it.
Like the petals fall off of the bloom
right.
real quick, and so
Yeah,
he may be okay.
Yeah, I think it might be fine, but I do think maybe environmental factors. Could it be moisture? Could it be heat stress? I don't know, nutrients.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that came to my mind. But the old seeds, it's a couple of years old. I didn't think was that big a deal.
Yeah. Where is he?
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. I don't know what the rainfall has been there, but I know we had a lot of in our area. We had certainly had adequate moisture. Through the summer, but I'm not sure about over there.
All right. So there you have it, Matthew. We just have more questions about that. I hope that helps you out. Here's our next viewer email. I have brown spots on my oak leaves. Are they okay, or is there a problem? And this is from Miss Betty. All right, so Wes, what do you think about this question?
That's a southern red oak in that picture, and it has a lot of spots on it. Those spots are fungal. It appears to be the fungus anthracnose. It's a foliar fungus. We had so much rain earlier this year that it's not unusual to see that fungus on the trees. Now, the best practice to help prevent it next year is to rake up the leaves and dispose of them when they fall off the tree this year. And the leaves that are falling on the ground now, do the same thing. Rake them up and dispose of them. Just don't let them lay there, because when it rains again or you irrigate, it splashes the spores that are on the leaf from that fungus, and it just sends it right back up to another plant or back up into the tree.
All right, thank you, Wes. We appreciate that. There you have it, Miss Betty, from our certified arborist. Here's our next viewer email. Why are my green figs not getting ripe? The tree is an old one. It has never done this before. All right. So green figs not getting ripe.
The only thing I could find on that is lack of water. And it's been a while since we've had a rain in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, here too as well.
That's the only thing I've seen. You got any other?
That's the only thing
ideas?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they'll just sit there and they'll just wait. Water it. You can water the tree, and that should accelerate. One thing you can't do is pick a green fig and let it ripen on the shelf.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
It don't work like that.
It's got to ripen on the tree. That's the only thing I
think
of.
Yeah, but moisture's the only thing I've I've learned.
The fact that the tree is old shouldn't have anything to do with it. I mean, even when trees are on their last leg, the last thing they're going to try to do is reproduce.
Right.
And so they'll produce good fruit. Usually, you know, either their last year of life. You know.
Right.
And
Right. And it did produce, you know, the figs like you were mentioning. So yeah, the fact that it's old.
no.
No. But we had Mr. Bill Colvard. You know Mr. Bill.
Oh, yeah.
You know, knows a lot about figs and whatever. And I heard him say before that usually that's the case when it's green, it hadn't ripened yet. Usually moisture.
Bill Culver knows.
Yeah.
Whatever he
I
says
would-
about
yeah.
figs, I would believe
I would
that.
trust that guy
Yeah.
about the figs. So thank
He's
you
the
for the question.
Fig expert.
Yes, he is definitely a fig expert. All right, Mr. D.
That it?
Fun as always, man.
All
Fun
right.
as always. Thank you much.
Good.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. If you want to learn more about how trees live and grow, or about the weeds Mr. D talked about, go to familyplotgarden.com. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.